Hi, welcome to Caribou Country Lifestyle. My name is Cheryl, and today I'm going to be, I've just roasted some chicken carcasses. These are the chickens that we processed this last summer, our meat birds, and we ended up piecing all of our chicken meat this last year. I have 4 chicken carcasses roasting in my oven, and then I'm going to be putting them in my electric roaster. I did put some flavored basil oil in the bottom of the pan, but these look so amazing. They're very well roasted. Okay, and we'll just put these right into my electric roaster. Plus, I also found 3 cups of chopped up chicken meat in the freezer in a bowl, so I brought that out too. And then I'm gonna dump all of these juices in as well. Put those bones in there too. I hope there was like a part of a bottle in my garage. So if it's not enough, I can get some more. So I have filled this up, topped it right up. I want as much broth as I can make. I have it at 250 degrees. So I'm going to put a good amount of salt. This is a kosher salt that I'm using. Okay, a good amount of salt, a good amount of pepper as well. Because not only am I going to be making a bunch of chicken broth that I will process, I'm also going to be doing a bunch of chicken soup. So I will let this simmer for, oh gosh, I'm going to let it simmer for a while. I'm just going to add some bay leaves. I bought these bay leaves from the grocery store. Look how big these are. Like, that is crazy how big that is. Anyways, I'll put 2 of these, 3 of these in. Hi, welcome back. We are on day 2 of doing my roasted chicken carcasses. I did that for a full 24 hours. It was probably even a little bit better than 24 hours. I have taken the meat and pulled it off of all of the bones, and I have that reserved in a couple of bowls, or I have it reserved in one bowl. I have some tomatoes that are ripe and I need to deal with them. So what I'm doing is I'm just cutting these tomatoes out, and I'm cutting off the core from the tomato and any ugly spots. And these are the tomatoes from my garden that I'm still waiting for them to ripen. Like, these are just really nice looking tomatoes. And so now I want to deal with them. So I'm just cutting them into quarters and I'm putting them in my clay pan here. I'm going to roast these tomatoes in the oven. And then when they're done roasting, all I have to do is slip the peels right off of them. And then I'm going to be making a barbecue sauce today to use up some of these tomatoes. I've done so many different recipes that I was like, you know, there's another recipe that I could use, then I don't have to buy it in the grocery store. So if I can find recipes, that was another reason why I made the tomato soup from scratch, was because you can't buy tomato soup that doesn't use flour as a thickening agent. I did put flour in it, but I used a rice flour, and he can handle that. So I'm just always looking for different things that I could be doing to make it not so expensive. The groceries, groceries, when you're just buying everyday groceries, and if you're not even on any specific diet, is expensive. But to buy gluten and dairy free, oh my gosh, you might as well triple your grocery bill having to buy gluten and dairy free. It's kind of crazy. So if I can cut some corners and not have to make some of those purchases that I would normally have to do for gluten and dairy free. So once I get all of these tomatoes cut up, then I will show you what I'm going to be doing next. I've chopped up all my tomatoes. I've added in even a little bit of cherry tomatoes that I had ripe. And then I've chopped up a bunch of I chopped up one white onion and a red onion. And I'm just spreading that over the tomatoes. And that is going to roast in the oven with the tomatoes. And I'll just spread these red ones over. And on this one, what I'm going to do is I have some garlic infused olive oil. I'm just going to put a little bit over each. I don't have much left in this bottle. Just put it over each of these. Take out some kosher salt. I'm just gonna put some kosher salt over everything. And then on this one. And when these tomatoes roast in the oven and I bring them out, the skins are just going to peel off like nothing. Adding a little bit of fresh ground pepper over this. I guess I should have turned my oven on. That would have been smart to do that in advance. So turn my oven on. So convection bake, 350, sure. So I've pulled out my tomatoes now, and what I'm looking for when I decide if these tomatoes are ready is I will take the tomato and flip it over, and if it comes off from the skin fairly easy, then I know that it's ready. So let's try this one. And there, the skin is coming off. So I know that those tomatoes are ready, and now all I'm going to do is let them cool because they're way too hot. While these tomatoes were roasting in the oven, I brought up a dozen of my quarts and I washed them up, and I also have chopped carrots, potatoes, celery, and onions. I did a yellow onion and a red onion. And now I'm going to be filling up these jars with everything that I'm going to be putting in my chicken soup. And I brought my pressure canner up as well. And we're going to fill up these jars and get them put into the pressure canner. And then my liquid that I'm using for the soup will be the chicken stock that I had in my electric roaster with all of the chicken carcasses in it. Start with the cut up chicken. This is the chicken that I peeled off of the bones, and I figure if I fill it about 1/3 of the way with chicken meat, and then the other 2/3 will be vegetables. I'm not sure how many jars I'm going to get. I think I can fit 8 jars in the pressure canner. But if I don't have enough for soup, then I'm going to be just doing the chicken stock in the remainder of the jars. So we'll just, might have a little too much in there. That looks more like half. Like I'm thinking I want at least a third of the jar. I'm dropping. I think I want at least a third of the jar to be meat and the other 2/3 to be vegetables. I have some more here that I had pulled off of some bones from before, and I didn't do anything with it, so I stuck it in my freezer so it would get used later. So I hate to waste anything. It was, oh, I gotta cut this up. This cut up. I guess it depends how many jars of soup you get, depends on how much chicken meat you have. So I'm gonna divvy up the last of this little bit of chicken meat. So I'm gonna put a handful of onions in each. And if I have more left over, then I'll add to it, to each of the jars. But I chopped up 3 onions. Not really sure how much I was going to need to make this soup, but I like the idea of having red and yellow onions in the soup together. I like the flavors of pretty much any onion. So I don't have much left. The potatoes will take up the most space, so again I'm gonna just put in a handful of celery. And I chopped up like the celery leaves and everything. I chopped up everything in the center stalk. It's all good in soup. I'll have just enough. I'm gonna get 8 jars of soup though, so that's pretty awesome. Okay, and then I'll do the carrots. There's a little bit of onion. Do the same, a handful of carrots. I chopped up my carrots that I had left from the garden, and then I ended up buying some carrots, which I haven't had to buy carrots in 4 months at least. I'm not sure if I'll be able to get all of these potatoes into here, but I mean I can push this down a little bit because I'm still going to be putting liquid in here too. So if I kind of pack it down a little bit, then I could probably get a little more in here. So I'll put the potatoes in and then I'll pack it down a little bit with my hand to make a little bit more room, and then I can add a little bit more to these jars. Okay, and then I'll just top these up with some more potatoes. Probably good. And these potatoes are also from my garden. So these are the Christina potatoes. This is one of the potatoes from the Christina potatoes from my garden. Like they did so well. I would so grow those again. And I think I'm almost, put a couple more in this one. be able to fit a couple more, but not too much more in the rest of these. And then I will add. Well, so far my vegetable ratio, as far as chopping goes, worked out quite well. I'm going to add a teaspoon of pickling salt to these jars, and then when I pour the chicken stock over it, then it'll just make its way to the bottom of the jar. Start by putting in a little bit of poultry seasoning. Probably is about maybe a quarter of a teaspoon, I'm gonna say. I don't want a ton, but I think it would give it some really nice flavor. Then we'll put in a little bit of thyme. The same, I'm not going to put a ton in, about a quarter of a teaspoon. And then the same with some oregano as well. Do a couple of turns in each jar. I need my screen because I haven't strained this chicken stock, so if I have any bones or anything, it will filter it through this screen. Or I have left over, then we will just can that as stock. Getting some already made meals that I know exactly what's going into it. It's not all processed air bubbles out. Once I do that, I might have to actually add a little more liquid once I've taken the air bubbles out, because I see it's going down, so I'm probably going to have to top this up. But you want to make sure you get those air bubbles out too. And this is just a rubber spatula, just a little rubber spatula. I don't even know where I got this from. And yeah, I just shove it down in like 4 corners of the jar. Can't remember if I did that one. I don't think I did, because as I'm doing it, the stuff is dropping, the liquid's dropping down. So I'm glad I remembered to do this. And then I'll top these up with some more liquid. Top it up with some liquid. That one doesn't need much at all. It didn't seem to make a difference. Like I'm not topping it up a ton, but I am topping it up a bit. 2 more. So just finger tight when you're screwing on your rings. Okay, my kettle, and this is only a 1.5 liter kettle, so I'm going to have to boil another kettle of water before this is ready. I'm just going to fill up these jars with this chicken stock so that when my next batch is ready to go, then I can just put it through and pressure can this chicken stock, and then we'll be all finished. I'm gonna pour this in. Oh, I want to put in a little bit of vinegar in my water. And that just helps to not get that white film on your jars when you're canning from the hard water. If you have hard water, you are going to end up with quite the film on your jars. Okay, now we're going to put these jars in. Seven quarts. I want to line up the arrow. Where is the arrow? We're supposed to be. Oh, here it is. Okay. So I need to line up the arrow right there. And then to close it, I want to make sure I just turn it this, but that. I had to grab my narrower funnel because that funnel is really good for wide mouth jars, but I have another one that's good for regular jars because I found a gem jar, and that's what I'm using for the last of this. Oh, don't get any lids yet. I need to wipe the rims down. Getting ahead of myself. Okay, let's wipe these rims. That's the gem jar with my gem lid. I'll grab some more lids for these jars. Oh, it's so good to get this done. What a great feeling. Get these rings on. I have my battery is totally fully charged now. I tried not to do too much of the next few steps, but it was really hard not to move on. So far, I have pressure canned my first batch in the pressure canner, and that was of the chicken soup. So now I can take the lid off safely, sit for 5 minutes in the pressure canner just to kind of let there are going to be some jars, there's going to be some venting, there's going to be still liquid boiling inside the jars from the soup. I took the tomatoes out of the oven and I peeled off the skins. And then I put them into a pot, just the pulp and the onions that were in with the tomatoes in on those trays. I put that into the pot. And then I had to add a tablespoon of celery seed, half a tablespoon of celery seed, half a tablespoon of those red chili pepper flakes. So I ended up doing 3 small cloves of garlic. And that was it in a pot with that. And I had to bring that to a boil. Then I had to turn it down to a simmer with the lid on for 20 minutes. Then I've been running it through my chinois. I was going to use my food mill, but the chinois, I realized that it works pretty good too. So I just need now a spatula to get this. I'll bring it over to, no, I'll just scrape it from here. So I'm just getting this excess puree from the outside of the sides of the chinois where I was mashing through that tomato puree. And I'm just going to scrape that down because I have to put this back into a pot, and I am not using anywhere near. I didn't have enough tomatoes to do a full batch, so this is actually a half of a batch. And then I'm going to return this into this pot. Make sure I get everything out. Half of a cup of vinegar. Half of a third of a cup of lemon juice. So I'm just going to fill my third cup half full. Three-quarters of a tablespoon of ground mace. I do not have ground mace, so as a substitute, they said to use nutmeg. And I need 3/4 of a tablespoon. So there's that. Tablespoon of salt, and I'm pretty sure that is going to be all the salt that I have. I have my husband picking me up some salt. More salt from Costco. Yeah. Half of a tablespoon of dry mustard. A half a teaspoon of ground ginger. And a half a teaspoon of cinnamon. Mix this together and we are going to bring this back to a boil on medium-high heat. So I'm going to have it at about just over medium heat because this is, like I say, a gas stove. The heat on a gas stove is a lot hotter and it's like instant hot. So I'll just stir this in while this is heating up and getting to a boil. Smells good. I've never made barbecue sauce before, so this is something new for me. I use barbecue sauce a lot in meatloaf, and I use quite a bit of it in meatloaf because I put it in the meatloaf, and then I also use it to make a sauce to put over the meatloaf. When I've taken it out of the pan, I'll put the sauce over top of it and then put it back in the oven and bake it at a higher heat, and then just let that sauce kind of caramelize over top of the meatloaf, and it is really good. I heard a couple of those jars, the lids sealing, so that looks pretty good just by looking at that from there. It's too hot. Sometimes I think my range hood is still too low to be doing this. I always got to turn it on an angle so I can get it out of here. And then what I'll have to do is I'll have to empty out this water. It's still kind of fizzing and bubbling a little bit, but it's still quite hot. Like, I wouldn't want to touch the sides of these jars. Okay, so we got those out. Once this comes to a boil, then I have to turn it down and let it just simmer for 30 minutes. So we're gonna jar this barbecue sauce up. Oh, first, hey, we should try it. And it's gonna be hot. It definitely has a very, very strong barbecue taste flavor. Let's get this jarred up. My pressure counter, I gotta keep an eye on the time too. Okay. And here's hoping this is going to be enough jars. Okay. That one out of the way. I also got to think about what I'm making for dinner tonight. It's like, oh my gosh. I'm gonna have to have something super easy. A little bit more. I will just use my spatula, because I didn't think I would fill this one up, but I will scrape it with my spatula. I had to turn my fan off so that you'd be able to hear me, because all my windows are steaming up, especially my living room window, and when that happens I usually turn my fan on. Okay, so I didn't quite fill this jar, but that's okay. I forgot to wipe And I noticed this one needed to be wiped. So I better wipe the rest of these. Get the rest of these lids and rings on. I can put this over on my pressure counter. So now it's going to start building up pressure. Once it builds up the pressure and this little gadget pops, there it is. So now it's going to start building up its pressure on the gauge. I want it to get to 15 pounds, and then I will set my timer for 20 minutes. And that is for the soup and the chicken stock. I'm going to end this video now. It went a lot longer than what I was planning on doing. So 2 days of getting things ready, getting my chicken stock done to make the chicken soup and the vegetables. And then I decided I needed to do up these tomatoes. So I made the barbecue sauce, which turned out well. I'm just waiting for my steam canner. Once that's ready, I'll pop these jars into my steam canner. In the steam canner for 20 minutes as well. And so then I will have to obviously set the timer on my my phone, because I already have this timer going. So I think I need to turn this down a little bit more. Okay, so thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you liked this video. If you like it, put a like in there. And if you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button. Thanks for joining me. We'll talk again soon. Bye for now.